All right. Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of my Blade Runner spinner build series. Last episode, if you remember, I finally got all these police lights working, figured out how to do my coding and all that on the Arduino trinket, and got that all set up and running, and you got to see a little sample of that here. Since then, I have also gone and I added a piece of clear plexi to the back burst light on this one light bar here to match the front on the other one. Also, the kit has red caps here, when in the movie you will see they're actually yellow. So fortunately the kit came with a couple of extra clear domes. I wish they had all of them in clear so you could do whatever color you want, but I do have 2 extra clear domes, so I want to try to match the movie as close as possible. So I'm getting rid of this red dome. I'm going to use this clear dome here, and then what I've done is I have gone and I've painted my clear domes with Tamiya clear yellow to match the yellow as seen in the movie, and I have now glued those into position with some of that crystal clear onto my light bars. Also, if you look at this screenshot, the burst light on the spinner is on the left bar, right light. I accidentally did mine on the left side of the left bar, but with everything glued into position, I tried and there's no way that's coming apart, so I'm not going to worry about it. It still looks pretty cool. I also added my 3 LED chasers to this police light here on the top side of the spinner. And then I went and added the red caps to both of these lights on top of the spinner. So there's one more light. There's this side light that goes on the side of the spinner. It attaches to the bottom and top of the car and clips on. Of course, I want to light this up with some LEDs, and I need to run them through here down inside so I can get the wires out into the spinner. So I've drilled a hole down through the top of this guy, and then what I did is I drilled a hole down through this area. They met in the middle, drilled it all down, and drilled another one up through the bottom, and it met there. So there's like a line going through there that I'm going to try to run my wires through. And this is the clear dome that goes on this side light. Unfortunately, again, red, should have been yellow, but I'll deal with it. And it's going to rotate as well with my LEDs inside there. So I've gone and I've painted the entire unit with my fine gray primer first, and then I went and I shot it with a coat of Army Painter black primer paint to make it black, and then I gave it a shot of some Tamiya mica silver, left the top of it black like it is in the movie, and I did a wash down the ribbed area on the side there with some German gray, just to kind of dirty that up and stand out all the little grooves of that area there. And I've pulled one wire through here. I figured one wire would be easier than 6 because we got 2 per LED and there's 3 LEDs. And I'm going to attach them to this wire and then try to kind of pull it through like a guide wire. And I have all of them soldered to this little guide wire here, and then I'm just going to slowly start tugging on it and see if I can pull it through all the way through and get all the wires in. And I did get all the wires through. Here they are. There's my 3 LEDs on the top there, and then here's the red clear dome which goes on top, and you can see that fits nice and neat over my LEDs. So at this point, quick light test. The LEDs are still working. That's a good thing. And then I'm going to take some of the micro scale micro crystal clear, and I'm going to use that like I have been doing to basically glue those into position, and then once it dries totally clear, the LEDs will be visible once they're up and running. And like the other chaser lights, I'm going to check them and mark the cables so I know which one is 1, 2, and 3 for the sequence. So we've got that one would be number 2, that would be number 1. No, that's number 2. So the first one was number 3. That's 1, 2, 3. So I've gone and I've put a little bit of yellow paint on there again to mark which one is which, so when I solder it inside the car I'll know where it goes. So we're at a point now where it's time to move on and start applying all the decals around the entire body of the spinner. And I'm going to start with these no step decals here, and I'm just going to start taking all the decals off the sheet and go around the entire spinner and start applying all the decals where they're supposed to go. And of course we have this decal here which covers the side fender light. So as soon as I get this applied, I'm going to fire up the LED and see how it looks with the decal. And that looks wonderful. It looks just great. So you'll notice on this decal it's red here on the bottom. This is just like aviation. Left side is red, right side is supposed to be green. So down here should be green, and you'll even notice on the actual filming miniature it was green down on the bottom. So what I want to do is I'm going to paint this green and then use just the yellow part of the decal. So I have gone and painted this with the Tamiya clear green, and turning it on it shines through just fine. If I turn down the aperture on the camera a little bit, that's more how it looks to the eye. And then I just went ahead and I applied the decal to the top portion. Again, I just cut off this red portion, removed it, and when we fire it up it works just great and looks seamless. And again, this is more how it looks to the human eye. And finally I've put on the last of the decals on the doors. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put the glass in the bottom portion of the spinner here, and I'm using my micro crystal clear as the glue once again. Works really well for windows and stuff. Since it dries clear, you don't see anything. It doesn't leave any foggy residue like super glue or anything like that. You can see how they're glued in place and they look great in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the top windows into the top of the spinner now, again using the micro crystal clear as my glue. And I got both of those also glued into place. Now we've got the most disappointing part of the kit, the tires. We have the rear tires here and the front tires. And I say disappointing because they're just flat round, no tread. They're really, sorry, excuse for tires, sorry Fujimi, that's my one complaint about this kit. But if you look at this, I did a little tread thing. This is about as small as I could get them. I know they're a little larger than they should be, but that is vinyl stickers. I had a friend of mine with a Cricut print out some vinyl stickers of the tread that I had designed in Photoshop. And then there it is with black. It's looking pretty cool. Even the texture of the paint adds a little bit of that rubber texture to it. I like the way it's looking, even though it's a little larger than it should be scale wise. But here's all four tires. It's much better looking than just a flat round disc, that's for sure. And then I've gone and I've painted the wheels of all of these with the Tamiya mica silver, so they definitely look more like tires and wheels now. Then I painted these two little pieces with the mica silver as well. This is how the tires attach to the front. So we've got them here, and then these little pieces just slip right over. And the rear ones, they just fit right on the back like so. I'm going to go ahead and put those on. And the front ones will fit right inside like that. This is the rod I'm going to use to mount the spinner to my base, run the wires through. I have this little plastic piece left over from some kit. It's beveled, tapered, but it's hollow all the way through, so if I put my rod in here, it'll bottom out and it can't go all the way through. So I'm going to use this as a stopper on the inside of my spinner for the rod. So one of them, this one here, I have shaved down. I've cut down thinner so that it will fit inside the car. The other one will go in the base. And the rod will just fit right into here. It still holds it in place because of where I cut it. There's still the tapered point there and it can't go any further. And then the other end will fit right inside there, and that will hold it in place in the base. Now that I have my rod, I'm going to have it come through right about here, so I'm going to start with a small hole, start drilling a small hole and go up from there until I get the appropriate size hole for my rod to come through. And I've got that hole done here, and my rod fits very snugly inside there. I got to give it a little twist just to get it in. And here it is on the inside, and I'm going to go ahead and place my little plastic piece here. And I've gone and I've super glued and hot glued that in place, and that'll secure and hold the rod when the car is placed on top. I also have my wires, red and black, positive and ground for the main lighting, and this white wire is the power for the trinket. And they run to the back. This black and red one run back here, and then I have a little connector that I've attached that will plug into the upper portion of the spinner, and then the white line here for the power for the trinket also has a little breakout that I did that will plug into the top portion of the spinner. Now don't judge, but this is my board for all of the flashing and chaser lights. I know it's crude, but everything requires a resistor, so I've got all these resistors, a row for flasher number 1, I have a row for flasher number 2, and a row for flasher number 3. And then I have these here are for the blue LED, the other one is for the red LED, and this is a power line for all the positives to connect to. So I'm going to go ahead and start running my wires of the light bars through some little holes that I drilled next to the windows. And you can see I have this light bar just about in place. And I've pulled the wires through the rest of the way, and I've glued and secured this light bar down on top of the spinner. And then I'm just going to do the same thing to the other side. Get all the wires through and pull it down, glue and secure it to the top of the spinner. This is the mess inside. A lot of wires. We have wires on this for the top lights, coming in from the sides, in through the center. And then I still have to be able to put the back wall here of the cockpit in place with the wires coming through. I also forgot that I had the side light. So I've run the wires for that through, but I have to let it kind of hang because it connects to the bottom and top of the spinner, and I can't do that until the bottom half of the spinner is attached. So I've got these wires taped aside, and the middle wires I have taped down, and I'm going to secure my board right here on top of those wires that are run down the center. So I've gone and I have hot glued this board into position where I want it, and then I've soldered bundles of all of my positive leads together, and then I just need to take all those and solder them to the hot on my board. And I've gone and I've done that. They're all soldered to that line I had, the sides, and all of these are soldered right to that positive line there on my board. And now I just need to attach all the ground wires to the resistors. And I've gone and I've attached all the other wires to the resistors. Then we have my trinket here. And what I've done with the trinket is I have these little standoffs to use when doing testing with it. And I've pulled the pins out of the little black plastic pieces, and I've taken the black plastic and I've hot glued it on either end of my trinket, just to use those as standoffs when sitting inside the spinner. And I've glued that into position where I want it on the back wall. And I've now run all the wires to the trinket. I have this breakout for the red and blue flashers on the bottom, and they're connected to red and blue and hot. Then I have this hot and ground to connect to the connector on the bottom, and I have this hot for the trinket connecting to the other little connector that's on the bottom of my spinner. And I've got all of these connectors attached together just so I can do a little test and give it some power. They light up, turn on the trinket, and all the police lights start doing their blinking and flashing, and everything looks fantastic and is looking really good. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. So now what I've done is I have finally put the bottom half of the spinner and attached it to the upper half of the spinner, and all the connectors are connected together. But now I have an issue here. There's a nice seam in the front here which I do not like, and you can see the seam on this side too. It's on both sides and it's a pretty heavy seam. So I've gone and I've filled the seams in with my Viejo plastic putty, and then I've gone and I've sanded them down to what feels like it's pretty smooth. With a shot of my gray primer, you don't really see the lines. They look really good to me. And then I repainted the blue and it looks great. There's no seams there now. Moving on, now we've got the windshield here, and you'll notice there's a stripe here on the side in this little area here, and then we have the same stripe and little area on the other side, and those are supposed to be the same color blue as the car. So I've gone and I've taped off the entire windshield except for that stripe area, and then I've gone and I've given it a shot of that same wildflower blue paint. Go ahead and remove all the tape here. And then there we got the windshield with the blue stripe. You'll notice on the miniature here there's this little area in the windshield that has like some black with little wires. So what I've done is I've cut out a little piece of styrene that I want to glue on the interior of this and paint it black and add some wires. That way when you're looking at it from the outside, you'll see it on the inside, and I want to try to simulate that same look from the miniature. So I've gone and I've painted both of my little styrene pieces with black, and then on the other side I went ahead and I painted them with the same color blue so that when they're glued to the interior it will match the stripes. And I've cut these teeny little strips of tape and painted them red that I'm going to stick on, and I'm just kind of trying to replicate what I see in the picture. There's some little red squares, don't know what they are in the picture, and then I've glued some wires on here kind of similar to the photo. Then I've used some of my micro crystal clear, and I'm just going to take this little styrene piece and stick it right onto the crystal clear and glue it into position. And then again, when the crystal clear dries, it'll be clear. You won't even see any glue or anything there, and the blue matches the outer blue. And that's what it looks like from the outside, very similar to what it looks like in the miniature photograph that I have. You can see those little red squares there. And then this area, we have a piece of glass that goes over. I painted this in the last video, but this piece of glass here is supposed to have a red stripe. You'll notice in this photograph there's like red over this section of glass. So I've gone and I've taped that off, and I'm also going to airbrush some clear Tamiya red on there. And here it is, the red. I know it's a little different than the miniature. Mine is clear so you can kind of see through it, which is what I was looking for. It's not quite as opaque as the miniature, but anyway, I think it looks pretty cool. And then when you add the front windshield to it, it looks very close to the way the actual filming miniature was. And lastly, for the windshield, there's a couple of decals to place on it. And I've gone and I've glued the little side bubble glass pieces into place on both sides of the spinner here. And then another final detail is we have this display here that hangs in the spinner. It came with the photo etch. Paul did a great job again adding that. And there's these little tabs that fold up here like so. And then you have the pole or whatever you want to call it that slips in here that holds the monitors in position inside the car. And I've gone and I've shot these as usual with my gray primer, and then I have painted them with my Tamiya German gray, airbrushed them with German gray. And you can see in this shot here, it hanging in that upper portion, you can see there's like blue monitors with yellow lights and the clocks. So I've painted it blue and yellow, painted the clocks, but then I thought, you know what, I have leftover screens from the photo etch from doing the dashboard monitors, so I cut out little pieces that I'm going to place inside these monitors to make them look a little more detailed. And I've gone and I've removed 3 different sections of these here, and then I've glued them in place on this little monitor display. Looks better than just a blue screen. And then I've gone and I've glued the rod that holds it in place and added some black wire to it to make it look like there's some cabling running to the monitors. Kind of hard to see it because it's so small. And I even added a little bit of wire to the back side to look like, you know, cables powering the monitors or running video to them. And you can see those in this shot here. And then I've gone and I've glued this whole thing in place inside the spinner, and it looks nice. You know, it looks like cables running to it, and it works well. So now that that's done, I can finally attach my windshield. There's one final bit of detail for the spinner. We have these little photo etch spinner logos that came with the model kit. They actually are on the real Filmy miniature, so I'm putting them, gluing them into position where they go on the car. On the rear, there's one on this side and one on the other side that I've glued into place. This is the base I made. I'm not going to cover making it, as I've done that before in my X-Wing and Y-Wing videos, and it's basically the same premise. But I've got a main power button, my USB power board, ground will go to the model. Power goes to one button for the main power with all the just standard lights. This button sends power to the trinket, and everything gets the same ground. This is the hole where the rod will go through and all the wires will come through. And on the back side, when the base is upright, you can see this button on the left here and this one on the right. And there's the USB. I've gone and I've painted my rod black now. And then the rod I will just put in place into my base, and that's nice and secure. And it's time to mount the spinner to the base. And I've got my 3 wires coming out of the bottom of the spinner here. And then I'm just going to feed them through the rod. They come out the bottom of the base here. You can see the wires coming out. And then I just go ahead and I attach my positive lead that powers the main lights that aren't animated. Solder the ground lead, which supplies ground to the entire model, all on the same ground. And finally attaching the lead for positive for the trinket to power all the flashing and rotating LEDs. And one final touch, this was included with the photo etch by Paul, which is really nice, the spinner logo, and I painted that on the inside, and I'm going to place that on my base. And that looks really nice on the base. So I really hate to do this to you, but that's going to wrap it up for this video. There are a couple little tweaks I want to do and a couple little things I want to clean up on the model before presenting it to you in its completed form. But next will be the completed build. So once again, I'd like to thank you for joining me in watching this build series. If you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.